Today's simulation objective: infiltration under total sensor lockdown. 6 trainees will act as the security net. Trainee Naomi Voss will serve as the lone infiltrator. They picked the quiet one. The decision hadn't been cruel. It had simply been the ordinary kind of certainty that grows in places where nobody has ever been forced to question it. Naomi Voss had been at the Halcyon Fleet Institute for 6 months. 6 months of finishing assignments without complaint, sitting near the back of tactical theory, and saying just enough in group briefings to avoid ever being asked a follow-up question. She hadn't been avoiding anyone. She had been reading the building, the guard rotations, the sensor blind spots, the way the instructors talked when they thought no cadets were listening. There is a difference between invisible and unnoticed, and Naomi had spent 6 months making sure everyone around her confused the two. The 6 trainees assigned to the security net were, by any fair measure, the Institute's best. 2 Kathrani enforcers with the fastest reflex scores in the third-year roster. A Daln analyst whose pattern recognition results had never been matched by a cadet her age. A Bruxelles pair bonded since infancy, who could coordinate without speaking. And Ilo Renz, a first-generation officer candidate whose instincts for ambush had already earned him a provisional commendation. Instructor Vashti selected the group personally. Cadets in the observation gallery would later say her expression, as she read the names aloud, gave away nothing at all, which, in hindsight, some of them decided should have been the first warning. The simulation began the moment the lights in Sector 4 dropped to standby. The 6 trainee net deployed a textbook containment grid, the kind the Daln analyst had drafted herself. Overlapping sensor arcs, staggered patrol timing, and a central relay point that any infiltrator would eventually be forced toward, because the building's architecture left no other route to the objective terminal. It was sound. It was the sort of design that had never failed against a single infiltrator in the Institute's recorded history. Naomi was already past the outer sensor ring before the grid finished calibrating. This was the detail the simulation log would return to again and again once the review board pulled it apart. She hadn't waited for the grid to activate and then found a gap. She had watched 3 prior training cycles, memorized the calibration sequence's timing window, and moved through the 1 11-second gap that existed only while the system was still booting. A gap so brief that the Daln analyst herself hadn't flagged it as exploitable, because no trainee had ever been fast enough or patient enough to use it. By the time the grid came fully online, Naomi wasn't in front of it. She was already 14 meters behind the Kathrani enforcer's assigned perimeter, moving in a route that put every subsequent patrol adjustment exactly 1 step behind where she'd already been. What followed over the next 58 seconds was something the Institute's tactical AI flagged for manual review 3 separate times before it would commit to a summary. Naomi didn't evade the security net so much as she rewrote its assumptions from the inside. She let herself be almost seen by the Bruxelles pair at a moment she had chosen, because their reaction pulled the Kathrani enforcers out of position to cover them, which opened the exact corridor she needed. She wasn't hiding from 6 people. She was using 5 of them to move the 6th. Ilo Renz, whose instincts for ambush had earned him that provisional commendation, was the one who almost caught her, not because his instincts failed, but because Naomi let him almost succeed, drawing him 14 seconds off his post to chase a decoy sound she'd staged 2 minutes earlier with a dropped access card. When the simulation's tone sounded at the 90-second mark, the objective terminal was already reading a successful data extraction, logged at second 58. The observation gallery went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with disappointment and everything to do with recalculation. Instructor Vashti walked the Sector 4 corridor herself afterward, reviewing the sensor logs with the unhurried attention of someone confirming a result she half suspected but hadn't allowed herself to expect. Then she found Naomi at the terminal, already logging out with the unbothered calm of someone finishing a task that had gone exactly as planned. "Cadet Voss," she said. "The objective was extraction before detection." "Achieved," Naomi said. "The objective didn't specify a margin." "No," Naomi agreed. "It didn't." Vashti was quiet for a moment, in the particular way instructors go quiet when they're deciding how much of what just happened belongs in an official report. The Daln analyst's grid has never been beaten in 6 years of records. You beat its calibration window before it was even live. "I watched the last 3 cycles run," Naomi said. "The window's always 11 seconds. Nobody ever used it because nobody was in position early enough to try. You were in position before the exercise began. I was in position before the semester began, Naomi said. I've been timing that calibration since orientation week. The gallery's quiet shifted into something else. The particular stillness of a room realizing it needs to revise what it thought it understood about someone it had stopped paying attention to months ago. Vashti filed her assessment the next morning. The summary contained 3 lines the institute's dean would later read aloud at a staff review. Trainee Voss completed the exercise objective through preparation that predates the assigned timeline by a full academic term. Her methodology reflects an operational patience this program has not been designed to test for. Recommend individualized scenario design going forward. She is not being underchallenged by her peers. She is being underchallenged by the curriculum itself. Naomi read the assessment when it was released to her. She noted the recommendation, filed a short request that the next scenario be scheduled without advance notice, and went back to the mess hall, where nobody yet knew what had happened in Sector 4. Ilo Renz found her there 2 days later, which took him some effort, since admitting he'd been outmaneuvered by a trainee half the institute hadn't bothered to learn the name of wasn't something that came naturally to him. The decoy, he said, sitting down without asking. The dropped card. You planted that before the sim even started. 2 minutes before the tone, Naomi said. I needed you 14 seconds off your post at exactly the point where the Bruxel pair would still be recovering from the diversion I ran on them. You planned 6 people's mistakes in advance. I didn't plan your mistakes, Naomi said. I planned your patterns. There's a difference. He considered that longer than he expected to. You've been watching all of us. I've been learning the building, Naomi said. You happened to be in it. That conversation ran another 15 minutes, and by the end of it Ilo Renz had asked her 4 separate questions about calibration windows, patrol timing, and how long she'd actually been keeping notes. Naomi answered all of them, because there was no longer any reason not to. He would tell younger cadets years later that he lost to Naomi Voss before the simulation ever started. Not because she outfought the net, but because while he had spent 6 months training for the institute, she had spent 6 months studying everyone already inside it. The end. If you liked the story, please subscribe to our channel.